Rebel News has just uncovered Justin Trudeau's bureaucrats trying to obscure their expenses on Justin Trudeau's India trip with some very questionable accounting schemes. And we are hiring lawyers to file a complaint to the Auditor General to hold them accountable. But we need your help to do it. Remember Justin Trudeau's ill-fated and completely embarrassing trip to India in 2018? I mean, who could forget? Bollywood stars were bothered by Justin Trudeau's weird performative behavior in endless costumes, describing them as more Bollywood than Bollywood. But that wasn't even the worst thing. Justin Trudeau took an anti-India Khalistani terrorist with him on the trip to India as an official guest of the delegation. And that caused an international catastrophe. And then Canadian farmers ended up in a bit of a trade war after the fact when tariffs were slapped on them by the Indian government in response. Now, the whole thing was a complete and absolute disaster. Apparently, right down to the accounting problems and sneakiness the Liberals thought the Canadian public would never uncover, but I have. And I have the internal emails to show you today as evidence of how the Liberals were hiding their expenses by asking a hotel to inflate the price of one room that the hotel was already giving the entourage for free to hide the fact that bureaucrats were overspending on their own rooms. The bureaucrat rooms were much nicer and more expensive than they should have been. They were over the allowable expense amount. So the bureaucrats were pressuring the Indian hotel to hide the costs by sprinkling the overage into another room that they said was meant for the Prime Minister. Now, I've got the email evidence to prove to you what they've done. I got it in a 1,700-page document package that we just received, and that we are continuing to meticulously examine regarding Justin Trudeau's trip to India. I've uncovered other expense problems in this enormous pile of internal documents, briefing notes, and planning emails, and we'll get to those in the coming days. But first, look at this. Point number 2 in these emails. Hate to ask this given the multiple changes, but my HQ has now come back asking if you can charge and then the bureaucrats who gave the documents to me blanked out, at the same rate as the Prime Minister's suite and reduce the club room rates by the same amount. For example, charge 60,000 rupees for each night and then and they've blanked it out again, and reduce the club rooms to 12,900 rupees. And then they give the math in case anybody was having trouble following along with their fraudulent little accounting scheme to hide their expense overspending. Now, the email goes on to say, your room revenue stays the same, but on our side, the payment is covered by a different party. Well, isn't that convenient? Let's go on, though, because there's more here. Possible? Sorry, we are unable to have and then they've blanked out whoever they're booking this for at a rate of 60,000 rupees plus. Our minimum threshold for, and then they blank out whoever they're doing this for, is 200,000 rupees plus taxes. And the same was offered earlier. So let's stop here to explain, because this is kind of complicated. The Liberal bureaucrats wanted the Canadian taxpayer to be charged for a second, super fancy phantom suite, just like Trudeau's, and then have the hotel underbill for club rooms. But it gets even worse because the hotel that they were dealing with was actually providing that extra suite already at no cost to the Canadian taxpayers. So the Trudeau bureaucrats wanted the hotel to charge them, which means us, the Canadian taxpayer, for the room the hotel was already graciously comping, so that the bureaucrats could, on paper, spend the same amount of money, but also fit their own fancier club rooms in under the allowable expense claims for the bureaucrats. So sneaky. And it's evidenced right here in this email. Also, very, very sorry to come back on, and then they've blocked out basically everything here. It would be fair to share some of the extra charge between the RCMP and the ICA. Do you think the hotel would agree to charge and then they blank that out, at the same rate as the Prime Minister's suite instead of at no cost at all? So do you get this here? There's an extra room. The hotel, grateful for the business courtesy of the Canadian government, is comping an extra fancy suite. But the bureaucrats are sneakily trying to hide some of their own expenses here. So they want to actually pay for the extra suite that they have no plans on using in an arrangement where the hotel would then use that payment to decrease the cost of the club rooms for the bureaucrats and hangers-on. So they get fancy rooms and the Canadian taxpayer gets the bill, and they're paying for those fancy rooms and hiding the fees somewhere else. And there's more. Look at this. And adjust the club room rates and then of course they blank out the floor number here for some reason, accordingly, which would be a bit lower than the 15,000. Friends, this is a serious violation of the public's trust, and it's a misuse of expense account spending. At the very least, this is absolutely unethical. Heads should roll, and someone should be fired here. There should be a serious audit here in which the RCMP should be called in to investigate. So you know what? Rebel News hired a lawyer to file a complaint to the Auditor General. Now, you can help us offset those legal costs and sign our petition at audittrudeau.com. We don't get any money from Justin Trudeau, like the CBC and the mainstream media do, and we wouldn't take it anyway. How could we investigate Justin Trudeau and his misspending bureaucrats while relying on Justin Trudeau to pay the bills? There's a reason we're the only ones asking these questions. How many other times have Canadian taxpayers paid for things that no one used so that Trudeau bureaucrats could abuse their expense accounts to give themselves nicer accommodations? Like I said, this document package is 1,700 pages long, and we are still going through it all. And there is so much more to come that I've uncovered. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. On Justin Trudeau's 2018 trip to India, his bureaucrats were pressuring a hotel to adopt shady accounting practices so that the bureaucrats could provide themselves with nicer rooms to get in under their expense claim limits. We think there should be an audit done here, and the RCMP should be called. And we have hired a lawyer to make that happen. To help us and to sign the petition, please go to audittrudeau.com.